code. This is a mock RPR from the week 2 packet, and it does have warm-up for each segment. So, welcome to the RPR Literary Examination warm-up material. Following is 1 minute of practice dictation at 180 words per minute. This is the same voice you will hear on the actual test. Ready? Begin. Thank you for inviting me to your court reporting class this afternoon. I am delighted you did because this school has a fine reputation for turning out good reporters. A few years ago, I heard a judge say to a student, "When you say you are a court reporter, that is what you had better be." I feel certain that when you graduate from this institution, you will be able to say you are indeed a court reporter. I am going to talk to you today about building your shorthand speed because that is probably uppermost in your thoughts. And I am going to put a lot of emphasis on the way you practice because that is probably the most important habit you must learn. When you are building your shorthand speed, there are certain things you should do and certain things you should not do. Some students never reach the necessary speed because they spend too much time perfecting their system, the types of outlines they write, and not enough time perfecting their habits of practice. I sincerely hope this is the end of the practice dictation. We are now ready to begin the literary portion of the RPR examination, which is 5 minutes of dictation at 180 words per minute. Ready? Begin. I am honored to be with you, the men and women on the front line of American labor. We depend on your work. We depend on your dedication and love of our nation. That is what helps fuel our economic engines in peacetime. These same qualities help us remain safe and free in times of peril. I believe from the bottom of my heart that the working men and women of this nation built America and can build a future that will once again make us first in opportunity, first in jobs, first in trade, and indeed first in the world. We should outcompete, outproduce, and outtrade any nation. There is absolutely nothing wrong with America that cannot be mended. There aren't any limits to our future if we don't put limits on our people. The real American dream is not to get rich in material comforts, but just to have the chance to succeed, particularly for our children. It is to provide the means so that every person is given a chance to climb as high as his or her potential allows, regardless of color, race, or station in life. I want America to reach its full potential. This country can do much better than 2 or 3% growth each year. It can do much better than cities without jobs. It can do much better than cities with empty piers and shipyards. I say we can do better than to have factories running only at 70 or 80% of output. We must do better so our farmers will be able to export their crops. This nation needs to have an all-around plan for the next decade to boost exports and economic growth. It needs to have a plan that will give us millions of new jobs, bolster our manufacturing strength, and improve the quality of our products. Only then, by using the latest in technology, will we once again be the envy of the world. If we can lower interest rates, if we can lower tax rates, if we can lower trade barriers, we will expand our world trade. As we expand economic growth, our docks and piers and ships will automatically start brimming with goods again. There will be abundant jobs for all. There will be room for everyone to get ahead and move upward. But take away the growth, take away the dreams, and America surely will find itself competing for a smaller and smaller pie. I say that we cannot put America back on top of the world until we put America back to work again. We will not accomplish our goal until all of us, blue collar and white collar, black and white, labor and capital, work as a team to fight and to win the battle for world markets and economic justice. I say that our workforce plays a vital role for workers' rights. Abraham Lincoln said that capital is the fruit of labor and could not exist if labor did not exist first. Without labor, there is no capital. Good wages are to labor what profits are to capital, and we need both. We must keep in mind that people are not created for the benefit of industry, but that industry is created for the benefit of people. We must strive to set a high standard of economic justice, which means to me no inflation and a good job for each man and woman willing and able to work at a decent and good wage. I feel every citizen deserves the chance to be a homeowner and a landowner. Rather than sitting back and watching our urban areas decay, we need to help our inner cities with bold new programs that will offer tax incentives, fewer rules, and much needed seed money. Each public housing resident in this country needs to have the chance to buy his or her house or apartment at a fraction of its market value. I repeat that the issue is not black versus white. It is not capital versus labor. It is not left versus right. The issue is renewing the dream. The issue is getting America moving again, not just for some, but for all. There is nothing wrong with our great country that cannot be fixed. There aren't any limits to our future if we don't put limits on our citizens. What we need is the ladder of opportunity so that every person has the chance to climb as high as his or her potential allows. But all our efforts to restore our economy will be in vain if we do not meet another great challenge, the family. I feel we need a rebirth of respect and compassion for the dignity and sanctity of human life, both young and old, born and unborn. When you think about it, there are so many things we can give our young. We can give them a strong moral foundation and respect for authority. We can help them tell right from wrong. We can show them by our example that kindness, compassion, and generosity are the traits of a good and worthy people. Let us move to restore order in the classroom. Let us create new ways to reward our best teachers in the fields of math and science. Let us instill the lasting values of faith, honesty, and patriotism. This is the end of the RPR literary exam.
Okay, this is the RPR jury charge examination warm-up material. Following is 1 minute of practice dictation at 200 words per minute. This is the same voice you will hear on the actual test. Ready, begin. Members of the jury, the time has come for me to instruct you on the principles of law that you must follow in considering the evidence and in reaching a verdict. When you go into the jury room, remember that you must give equal weight to each principle of law. The fact that I give them in a particular order does not mean that I am placing more emphasis on some and less on the others. Take these principles as I give them in these instructions and apply that law to the evidence. Examine only the evidence that has been received during this trial. After you have discussed the evidence and after you have applied these principles of law to that evidence, you should let your sound reasoning and best judgment guide you in reaching your verdict. If any one of you has gained the impression that I have an opinion about the defendant's guilt or innocence, you must then disregard that impression. You must decide this case solely as you view the evidence. You are the sole judges of the facts, and I am the judge of the law. Keep in mind what the attorneys said in their closing arguments. This is the end of the practice dictation. We are now ready to begin the jury charge portion of the RPR examination, which is 5 minutes of dictation at 200 words per minute. Ready, begin. Members of the jury, I will now give you the instructions on the law that you must follow in considering the facts and in reaching your verdict. When you apply these instructions, keep in mind the following 2 things. First, you must consider all the instructions and apply them to the evidence. Second, you must give equal weight to each instruction. The fact that I give them in a particular order does not mean that one is more important than the others. Take the law as I give it in these instructions and apply that law to the evidence. Consider only the facts that have been received in this trial. After you have considered the facts in these instructions, you should let your soundest reason and best judgment guide you in reaching your verdict. If any one of you has the impression that I have an opinion about the defendant's guilt or innocence, you must disregard such impression. You must decide the issues of facts solely as you view the evidence. You, ladies and gentlemen, are the sole judges of the facts, and I am the judge of the law only. The district attorney has filed a complaint in this case, which charges the defendant with the crime of pointing a firearm. I instruct you that a complaint is nothing more than a formal accusation, and that it does not give rise to an inference of guilt. You may take it as evidence against the defendant in any way. Before you may find the defendant guilty of this crime, you must be satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that the state has met its burden of proof. This means that the state must establish not only that he pointed a firearm at another person, but also that he did so intentionally. Although you cannot look into his mind to find out his intent, you may determine his intent from all the facts. You may consider anything he said or anything he did that would show his state of mind. If you are satisfied that the state has met its burden of proof, you should find the defendant guilty. But if you are not so satisfied, you must find him not guilty. When you go to the jury room to discuss this matter, you should examine the evidence with care and caution, and you should proceed with all the discrimination, reason, and prudence you have. Remember, while you are looking at the facts, that the defendant does not have to prove his innocence. The law presumes that every person who is charged with a crime is innocent when he walks into the courtroom. This presumption, moreover, stays with him throughout the trial. Therefore, if you find that the facts agree with any reasonable theory of innocence, you should find him not guilty. Before you may find him guilty, you must be satisfied not only that the state has overcome this presumption, but also that the state has done so beyond a reasonable doubt. Keep in mind that the burden of proving every fact to establish guilt is on the state. Before you may return a verdict of guilty, you must be satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that he is indeed guilty. Now, this kind of doubt is not a mere suspicion that you can reach by guesswork, nor is it just an uneasy feeling that arises either from sympathy for the defendant or from a fear to return a true verdict, nor is it a barrier that you may stand behind to avoid the duty of making a decision. This kind of doubt is a rational conclusion that you arrive at based on your interpretation of the evidence and on your sound judgment and common sense. It is a state of mind that would cause a person of ordinary prudence to pause or hesitate when called on to act in the most important affairs of life. It is a doubt for which you can give a reason, and it must arise from a fair consideration of the evidence or lack of evidence. While it is your duty to give him the benefit of every reasonable doubt, you are not to search for doubt. You are to search for the truth and then give him the benefit of a reasonable doubt if one arises. It is your duty to examine the testimony carefully and to decide what bearing it has upon his guilt or innocence. You are the sole judges of the weight and the credit that you will give to each witness. In determining what weight and credit you will give to the testimony of each witness, you should take into account each person's appearance and demeanor on the witness stand and each one's interest in the result of this trial. You should also look at the clearness of their recollections, the chance they had for seeing and hearing the matters and things they testified to, and the truthfulness of what they said. Look at their possible motives for lying and add all other facts appearing in the trial, which tend either to support or to discredit their testimony. The defendant under our law is a competent witness in his own behalf, and you should not discredit what he says merely because he is charged with a crime. You should weigh what he says just as you weigh what other witnesses say. Now, members of the jury, the court, and counsel have performed their duties. Counsel have given you their arguments, and the court has given you their instructions. The time has now arrived when the great burden of reaching a just and conscientious decision in this case is to be placed on you. You will not be swayed by sympathy or fear. You will be very careful and deliberate in weighing the evidence. I charge you to keep your duty steadfastly in mind and, as upright citizens, to render a true verdict. I will submit 2 forms of verdict to you. This is the end of the RPR jury charge exam. This is the RPR testimony examination warm-up material. Following is 1 minute of practice dictation at 225 words per minute. These are the same voices you will hear on the actual test. Ready, begin. Please state your full name for the record.
Marilyn A. Goldberg.
Ms. Goldberg, would you please tell the court to the best of your ability what you heard on the evening of September 5, 1987?
I will certainly do the best I can.
All right, proceed.
It was raining pretty heavily as I pulled into my driveway. I usually have a light on, but it was burnt out that evening. I got out of my car and heard a loud noise coming from across the street.
Your residence is located at 737 Madison Avenue.
Yes, it is.
How long have you resided at your present address?
For about 11 years. We moved in during the summer of 1974.
So you are well acquainted with your neighborhood?
Yes, all except the older couple who moved into the new house across the street.
Is that the house you presumably heard the noise coming from on the night of September 5?
Yes, the Thomases just moved in about 9 months ago.
Have you or your daughter had the opportunity to visit with them on any kind of regular basis?
No, they really do not seem to be the sort of people who want to develop any friendships.
Would you please try to describe for us the noises you say you overheard?
I'm not certain if I can.
This is the end of the practice dictation. We are now ready to begin the testimony portion of the RPR examination, which is 5 minutes of dictation at 225 words per minute. Ready, begin. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Sandra Fuller.
Are you employed?
Yes, I am employed.
What do you do for a living?
I teach mentally handicapped children
How long have you been doing that?
for approximately 5 years now.
Where do you reside?
I reside in Atlanta, Georgia.
Were you living here at the time of the accident?
Yes, at the time of the accident, I had been living in Atlanta for about 7 months.
Where were you working at the time of the accident?
I was working for the city of Atlanta as a counselor at a daycare facility.
Are you married?
No,
Have you ever been married?
no, I haven't.
Do you remember when the accident occurred?
Yes, it was on September 17, 2010.
Where had you been that day?
We had taken the children over to the park for a picnic, and I was just walking home from the park.
Approximately how far was it from the park to your apartment?
I believe it was about 2.5 or 3 miles.
Had you traveled that route before the day of the accident?
Yes, I had many times.
So you were generally familiar with the vehicular traffic in this area?
Yes, the daycare center was very close to the park, and I would often walk or jog to and from work.
Were you jogging at the time the accident occurred?
Definitely not. I was just walking home from work.
Where exactly were you when the accident occurred?
I was walking down Spring Street.
Do you recall approximately what time of day this happened?
I believe I left work around 3 o'clock, so somewhere around 3:30, 3:45.
Do you remember what you were wearing?
If I'm not mistaken, I was wearing white sneakers, bright yellow shorts, and a polo shirt.
Do you remember what the temperature was like that day?
It was very hot and humid.
Describe in detail where you were going and what you were doing when the accident occurred.
I was walking along Spring Street right by the museum. I was crossing 15th Street when the bus hit me.
Were you planning to proceed down 15th Street?
Absolutely not. I was crossing 15th Street. I was going to remain on Spring Street.
How often would you estimate you went home this way?
I took the same route virtually every day, morning and afternoon.
What times of the day would you normally be taking these routes?
Usually around 7 o'clock in the morning and then again at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Prior to the day of the accident, had you been conscious of the buses turning left at that intersection?
Well, I realized they were there, but I don't know if I was all that conscious of them.
You just never really paid any attention to them?
No, I was never consciously aware of them.
Do you remember what the traffic was like that day?
It was relatively light for that time of the afternoon.
Were you wearing any kind of radio headset or listening to any music?
No, I wasn't.
Do you wear prescription glasses?
No, I don't wear any kind of glasses.
Prior to crossing 15th Street, did you notice the bus that hit you?
No, I did not even see the bus until it was immediately in front of me.
Is there a traffic signal at that intersection?
Yes, there is a traffic signal at that intersection.
Do you know whether there is a turning lane for traffic heading north on Spring Street?
I believe there is.
Is there also a turn signal or a turn arrow for traffic wishing to make a left-hand turn?
I believe there is a turn arrow located at that intersection.
How many lanes of travel are there on Spring Street there at the 15th Street intersection?
There are 2 lanes of travel going in each direction and a center lane for traffic wishing to turn left.
Do you recall what color the traffic signal was when you were crossing the street?
No, I only remember the traffic signal indicating it was okay to cross the street.
Were you standing at the corner waiting for the traffic signal to change?
No, it changed as I approached the corner.
So you just continued walking?
Yes, Yes, I just continued walking.
Did you notice any vehicles turning in front of you while you were crossing 15th Street?
No, there were no vehicles there at the time.
Were you in the process of crossing the street when you initially became aware of the bus?
I was almost to the opposite side of the street when the bus hit me.
How far away was the bus when you first became aware of it?
I didn't even realize it was there until right before the impact. It really startled me.
Can you estimate the distance? Was it something like 2 or 3 feet?
I don't really remember. All I remember is turning around, seeing the bus, and throwing up my arms to protect myself.
What was the bus driver doing when the collision occurred?
I don't know what he was doing.
Was there anyone else around when this accident happened?
I believe there were some other people in the area, but I have no idea who they were.
Were you knocked unconscious by the impact?
I don't really know, but I think I was. I don't really remember a whole lot about what happened until I was in the ambulance.
Did the ambulance take you to the emergency room of the hospital?
Yes, they took me to the emergency room and took some x-rays.
Did you have any broken bones?
No, they said I had a concussion.
Were you admitted to the hospital?
The doctor wanted me to spend the night in the hospital, but I persuaded him to let me go home instead.
Did he give you a prescription that evening?
No, he didn't. He didn't want to give me anything because of the concussion, which is why he wanted me to spend the night in the hospital.
Getting back to the scene of the accident, what happened immediately after you were struck by the bus?
I don't really remember what happened right after it happened. The next thing I remember is I was lying down in the bus.
Do you know who carried you into the bus?
I wasn't aware then, but I discovered that later.
Who carried you into the bus?
My understanding is it was the driver and a police officer who had subsequently arrived on the scene.
Why did they carry you into the bus?
To put me in a cool place.
This is the end of the RPR testimony exam.